Good evening. It is Wednesday, November 15th, and I hope everybody got their taxes in today so the assessor's office does not come looking for us. Today is it's the regular work session for the City of Oregon City Commission, and we will convene the work session by having roll call.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Adam Marl is excused. Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. All right, we have one item on the agenda for this evening, and it is to review the municipal code updates for code enforcement, or as I call it, code compliance, because I want people to comply. Chief Davis.
Good evening, Mayor Commission. Tonight, Code Enforcement Manager Ryan Kersey and I are here to facilitate a discussion on several municipal code ordinances. Several of them have been brought up by the Commission to have discussions on about changing or adopting new language. Additionally, over the last 2 years, Code Enforcement have encountered some ordinances that aren't clearly defined or not specific in the municipal code. So adding additional language to existing ordinances would result in assisting, regulating, enforcing, and improving neighborhood livability. Some of the topics we're going to discuss tonight are the garage sales, construction hours, a graffiti ordinance, prohibited stopping, standing, and parking, scattering rubbish, and some change language to code and hearings officer language. The goal is for you guys to have a discussion. Code Enforcement Manager Ryan Kersey is going to facilitate that. We'll go over some topics and get some direction where the Commission wants to go with those. Bring up Ryan Kersey.
All righty. So the chief said while you're getting settled that, you know, there's some ambiguous language in the code, and I said, really?
Really? Thank you, Chief Davis. Good evening, Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Ryan Kersey. I'm the Code Enforcement Manager here for the City of Oregon City. Put together a little PowerPoint that kind of goes over the information that should be in your packet related to the ordinances Chief Davis talked about. Want to really explore kind of some conversations related to the Commission concerns. Some citizen concerns have been brought up to the Commission as well over the last year. Of course, topics of discussion, Chief Davis covered, but garage sales, municipal code updates, graffiti removal, construction hours, and then related to our current process in Chapter 1.24 of the municipal code, it refers to the hearings officer for most things related to code enforcement. And of course, probably over the last decade or more, we've been using the municipal court judge for that process. So we've identified that that'd be something good to change in the language, and we'll talk about that shortly. So overall, we're just going to go through each section one at a time. We're going to talk about garage sales first, kind of give you what we have currently, go over the topic, go over some considerations, and get some direction from the Commission. And then we'll kind of recap it with any questions you may have. So our current Oregon City Municipal Code, in the business license section of Chapter 5, has one small exemption for garage sales. And it basically has some open-ended language about not to be on a continuing basis. I know that can kind of be up to interpretation. Some people can take advantage of that. We've had some complaints over the last year and a half of people doing it multiple times a year, all the way up to like 10 or 12 times a year. The impact to the neighborhood, those kind of things that get involved. One of the things we're offering is to consider setting yearly limits. Many agencies around us have anywhere from 2 or 3 times a year, each sale being maybe 72 hours in duration. Some ordinances are like, you get no more than 8 full days a calendar year. So we have that here for you. Lake Oswego, Westland, Gladstone, Happy Valley, and Milwaukee are the ones that we considered. As you can see, most of them have 2 per year, and they kind of list the hours on some. One has the days lined out, etc. Westland has something that's just 8 calendar days per year, so you can split it up however you want. That could obviously open up the potential of having 8 individual sales. But really wanted to bring that back, because I know that was something that was brought up by the Commission as to follow up from some citizen complaints that came in. And then on garage sales, we're just really looking to get direction and answer any questions the commission might have. And if it's something you want us to pursue, we can draft up some ordinance language and bring that back at a commission meeting. So I'll open it up for questions, of course, on this individual topic.
Gentlemen?
Pretty straightforward to me. Look at 4 of the 5 cities. They limit them to 2 per year. Whether they consider it 3 days or 72 hours, it's the same number.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can't get rid of your stuff 2 times a year in 3 days or give it away, then you need to go to a hoarders class or something. So, I'm real comfortable with the 2 per year, no more than 3 days per. The other thing you had in there is about people that go out and buy storage units and turn around and sell them. That's a tough thing to prove for you folks. So, I mean, you can leave it in there if you get the opportunity to prove it in that respect. Go ahead and do it, but I think that requires some investigation, and that I doubt that you've successfully done that. But keep it simple: 2 per year, 3 days per sale. Done.
Yeah,
All right.
I agree with that. I guess my only question is, this is in the business license section, right?
Correct.
Okay, so are we talking about if you do more than this, you have to get a business license, or are we saying you can't do more than?
I think the way the current ordinance we have, it kind of leaves the garage sales as an exemption to having to get a business license. So we would probably just look at, obviously we would consult with the attorneys as well, but look at just clearly defining what your request would be on this exemption. I mean, we could make a separate ordinance, whichever would be easier, but this would kind of keep it in that business license regulation portion. So that way people know that as long as you comply with this as an exception, you do not have to get a business license.
Well, I guess what Mike is saying is that we want to
We don't want them to get a business
right,
license
we
to
don't,
get
we don't want something
Having
to
a
say,
sale in their
oh,
yard
well, I
every
want to
day."
have 4 a year, so I'm going to get a business license.
Right.
So we're saying that it's exempt from business licenses, period, but you can't get a business license if you want to have more than 2 a year.
Yeah, and we can definitely add that as a separate section underneath that definition.
Yeah, but, we're not implying that, oh, by the way, if you want to have 5 sales, then now you get a business license and
Right.
you're all,
No.
it's okay.
Right, no, that's not what we want. We want 2 a year.
So would it be more clear if
So,
we
and we're
created
talking-
an own ordinance of these are what garage sales, right?
You could create just that section.
We can do a section under the business license portion in chapter 5 that just clearly defines garage sales and what's
Okay, so what
allowed.
about, if it's in a commercial zone?
It would be regulated under the commercial business licensing and the zoning.
Yeah, so somebody could just move all their stuff over to get permission from allegedly get permission from somebody on Malala Avenue and just
They would
start having a
have, they would have to
garage.
go through the current business license approval process, which goes through all the departments.
Yeah. Well, I know we have the $3 clothing sale on a regular basis at the Hilltop Church. It's not part of the church, but they're operating out of there, and this was happening over and over and over again, and I think they finally got a business license,
Good, good.
is what I understand.
I'll make it clear that there is no such thing as a business license to hold unlimited garage sales in neighborhoods, period. So.
Well, that's what I'm asking, is it apply across the board to the city, or is it only residential areas? Or, last Sunday, some guy set up a stand selling berries on Malala Avenue next to a house. It's not being used commercially now, but it is zoned commercial. And I've seen berries and other things at that same parcel on the weekend. And I'm like, okay, what is going on here?
Yeah, and our staff's been really good, especially now working on the weekends, contacting those people that are, doing sales without a license, make sure they wrap that up, go get a license on the next business day or the same day before they come back out. So we even contacted one today and had to move along until they got their license, so.
Yeah, so I don't know whether the property owner there is allowing them to do that, or it's where it's next to the former Mid-Salt location. And Killers was in the house at one time, was painted red and white, if people remember back in the old days. So,
I think what we're hearing, we'll confer with the city attorney, what are the best avenue to put this in our code is to be clear that we're not going to authorize a business license for garage sales more than 2, and the consensus is some sort of code around 2 up to 72 hours.
Yeah, I think this is reasonable because it would still allow for people in the McLaughlin neighborhood to participate in the McLaughlin neighborhood sale, but that's like 1 3-day bunch. And somebody else could have a sale some other day, but then that
Would be it then.
would be it, yeah.
They couldn't do 2 on their own and participate in the McLaughlin.
You're saying they could or
They
could
could
not?
not.
Not, right, yeah, they couldn't have 2 on their own and then be in that one.
Correct.
That 3-day one counts as the one.
Correct.
Okay?
Good. We'll go on to the next topic, which kind of dives into some of the municipal code updates that we've kind of collected over the last 2 years that I've been here, things that we've ran into, things that are kind of gray areas for enforcement, things that are not clearly identified in our ordinances, which would allow us to be able to enforce things. One of the things that we found basically is we don't have a clear definition of signs and markings to enforce that in our municipal code. It's kind of split up in 2 different pieces within the parking ordinance in chapter 10. So we would like to just add something similar to this signs and marking ordinance here and add that inside of, 10.08.090. And it just talks about prohibited stopping, standing, and parking. And it kind of goes over the rules of the paid parking permit areas between 7 a.m. 6 p.m. weekdays, and of course, excluding holidays. And the reason for this is the current ordinance has a caveat of to enforce it, it has to be considered a hazard. And so when it comes to looking at that for court, you have to clearly define a hazard, and a vehicle may be parked in a permit spot might not be a hazard by clear definition. So this would be just clarifying that in a separate subsection, saying these are the rules related to signs and markings and permits in the city, and it would take away that hazard requirement.
Could you give an example?
Yeah, I'm trying to,
So in our current ordinance, hazards clearly defined. So the current signs and marking that we have in our ordinance is underneath hazard. It says it has to be a hazard to also, it can be in violation of the signs and markings, but it also has to be considered a hazard. Something that might be just parked in a permit spot may not be deemed a hazard, like a vehicle blocking the roadway or a vehicle blocking, a stop sign or a crosswalk, those kind of things, or a fire hydrant. So there's been some talk when we brought things to court under that we didn't meet a hazard requirement to enforce the signs and markings and the permit spot. So having it clearly defined in a subsection would take away the component of us having to prove that it's a hazard on top of being illegally parked in like a permit spot.
Okay, so what about like parking in front of a fire hydrant?
So that's clearly defined
As a
and
hazard.
also as a hazard. So that's already in there and that's no problem. The signs and markings is what also states has to be a hazard as well. So that's why we're trying to just separate that out a little bit. And so we
Yeah,
don't have the requirement of
but-
having to have it be a hazard as well.
So your example of parking in a permit space where you're not the permittee?
so it's like where the purple curbs are, or whatever, that's what we're talking about?
Exactly.
Or whatever color.
Yeah.
It was the second part I didn't understand, not the first part.
Yeah, I apologize for the clarity on that. And that's one of the weird parts is that, we didn't look at the hazard component. We read the portion saying signs and markings, but after going through court with it, it was like, well, it also has a hazard
I parked there
component
because
required,
I
so.
had to do this or.
Right,
whatever. Got it.
right.
Okay.
So this one would basically just be separating it out from the current ordinance, putting in its own subsection,
Yeah, that's
so we don't have to meet a hazard.
Brian?
But it
Brian?
kind of reads strangely. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think Frank, maybe you're going to say the same thing I was going to say. Can you go back? Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So, they had the paragraph at the bottom, except when authorized by,
Except,
the
that's-
following persons may not park them out, but then it doesn't mention any people. So I don't understand what the intention is there.
We're pulling up that specific municipal code ordinance, so you can see what A and B are.
I don't think they relate to people.
I don't see any reference to people after that statement.
Yeah, I think when you start the sentence with except, it's
Well, I'm just trying to figure out who the
besides being a
following persons.
prepositional phrase.
I'm just trying to figure out who the following persons are, because it doesn't talk about persons.
You can't park here.
Yeah, the following situations are not allowed, period.
Yeah, because otherwise you're saying the following persons, then you need to name who those following persons are, and we don't know who those.
And those are some of the things that we're trying to clean up with this, is just get rid of some of the confusing things.
You're going to that section, Jacob?
Yeah.
No person shall stop, stand, or park a vehicle in such a manner or location that constitutes a hazard to public safety or obstruction to vehicle, bicycle, or pedestrian traffic on a street, which shall include but not limited to, and then you have the list. Except, and then we got, okay, except to momentarily pick up or discharge a passenger. But see, that's the whole problem, is that people who are doing that are usually in a place that they're not supposed to be.
And
they're-
momentarily can mean a lot.
So,
Yeah, and-
yeah, so basically, we would basically, as it's marked on the PowerPoint, we would move that down to
Yeah.
C and D and then move that
Yeah.
C section down. So it just kind of separates it, makes it on its own.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard this phrase, I'm only going to be here for a minute.
Yeah, that's
We
what
do
And
hear
then
that.
I,
We
and
do.
then I go, oh, minute's up, you know, or, I know you're laughing. I've heard that so many times. Well, I'm really only gonna, well, you've been telling me you're gonna be there for a minute, you've already spent your minute, so, you know.
So, yeah, so with that code, A and B would stay. This would be the new C. Current C would
This-
become D.
When you say this, you mean this paragraph right there?
Yes.
So who are the following persons? What persons is it talking about?
It references to the very beginning of that ordinance where it says no persons shall park in these manners.
Yeah, but I think what he's saying is the word following persons does not, even if you connect it to it, it doesn't make any sense.
Right, and we would clean that up
Yeah,
on the
clean that
ordinance
up.
and bring
Okay,
it back
okay.
to you guys in a city commission meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
for
so-
review.
so we'll-
Following persons.
We'll see the final version.
Yeah.
Okay.
So where would be the exception that they were authorized by a valid city parking permit to be someplace that they're not supposed to be? Like a handicap spot or a loading zone, or I
And
don't
it
know.
would come
what.
down to like right-of-way permits, maybe for special events, those kind of things that get issued. I know Commissioner Smith, you've done a lot with the special events, you know, downtown. So they do things where even like in the trick-or-treating event, they brought down a couple vehicles. They had obtained permits from our engineering department just to make sure those vehicles stay there for the event and not have to pay parking for the day, those kind of things. So,
Yeah, okay, well, yeah, if you clean up that sentence and don't start it with except, that would be
okay,
great.
thank you.
Do you get any complaints on people parking within 20 feet of an intersection?
Funny you should mention that.
We do get that every once in a while.
Is
you
it
know.
20 feet or is it 10 feet?
20 by state law.
Yeah, most intersections are clearly identified, which is nice. Some aren't. And a lot more of the, you know, commuting roads outside of the neighborhoods are clearly identified. The ones in the neighborhoods, that's where we get a lot of the complaints, at least in our department.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make work, but you take main thoroughfares, Central Point, South End. I mean, if someone parks right up against the intersection, you got restricted visibility at higher speeds. And I don't know if we need to paint those things or what we need to do, but I don't know if your unit's been called on to enforce that. I know there's been one case in court where apparently if you're in a fire zone or a fire hydrant or something,
Yeah.
the markers in the middle have to be blue or something. Anybody know what
Supposed
that?
to be blue in the center,
Yeah, blue, and I don't think we have that covered either here.
Well, I
So-
think all the fire hydrants that I'm aware of in our neighborhood are the curb, it's yellow all the way by the fire hydrant to the intersection and then a certain amount of distance back, and it's yellow.
Well, I think we had a local case where the gentleman that came in was well-versed on fire laws and was aware that we were supposed to have blue reflectors or something.
And we have several of those, but if there's anything that you're aware of, feel free to send it over to us.
I'm
And we
aware
can
of that
follow up
one.
with our engineering team and just make sure it's handled.
Yeah, I mean, they're unmarked curbs, and I don't expect it to be done in every residential neighborhood, but some of these higher speed main thoroughfares, I mean, we had construction going on at one point, and they parked their heavy equipment like that, and it was ridiculous. So I just want you folks to be on firm ground when you have to do something. The fact that that would be painted would be pretty darn obvious. It's not a question of, was I within 20 feet? You're in that painted zone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we would be happy to split those duties with John Lewis and his crew on the painting maintenance. But we do a lot.
I appreciate you volunteering, John Lewis, because I can see I can see the enthusiasm from
Right,
here.
beat me to it, I was gonna do.
Yeah.
Yeah, John's got his own box of, yellow spray paint. You just go, takes care of it just like that.
They don't even have to bend over, they got that rod that
Yeah,
does
I
it.
know, and it just does it, I know.
So we did have a few more things that came in over the last 2 years. One thing is handicap parking's not clearly identified in the code at all, in our municipal code. It is enforceable through the state law. You would have to issue a citation to the actual driver and not the vehicle. So that's one thing that we're asking if you guys want us to, provide a new ordinance on. One of the other things that came up through citizen complaint, I know the commission, was blocking of mailboxes. And that's kind of been a topic off and on. What we've seen in the last couple of years is the postal employees will not deliver mail. And that sometimes could be community mailboxes, et cetera. They just won't get out of their vehicles, they won't deliver the mail. And so they could go, our enforcement, we're not able to even tow a vehicle if it's abandoned for at least 7 days, once we actually mark it and tag it. So
Could you tow a vehicle for handicap parking violations?
we would not tow that off of a private property for a handicap violation, but depending on where it's at,
Right
or
away.
public parking in the right of way on a street, then we would have that option too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you not only cite the driver, but you'd cite the vehicle as well, or it's just the vehicle?
We would just add this ordinance to be able to cite the vehicle. So if somebody did park in a handicap spot, it gives us the opportunity to issue that citation on a regular parking citation. The fines are about 3 times lower than using the state law and actually citing the driver. So we would kind of have a introductory enforcement option instead of just having to write them a ticket to actually come in to see the judge.
Well, the nice thing is that we've not had any further, because I was working with you on the one on Whitney Lane that I got all the phone calls about. And yeah, I went over there on random times because I knew a couple of people in that neighborhood, so I just took a different route. And yeah, it was like the mailbox is here and the person just knows of their car. And so what the information I got from the postmaster here in Oregon City was that if it's blocked in any way, they're not supposed to get out of the vehicle and go put the mail in the thing. So they've been directed, they just go by.
And that's unfortunate. So
Yeah, it is.
this would be something that we could add. These are some of the options we could add to our municipal code that we could bring back in our parking ordinance.
Well, it's just rude.
Yeah, it is definitely inconsiderate.
Inconsiderate, somebody blocking a mailbox, it doesn't make any sense.
Or
So,
blocking a driveway.
well, yeah, I've had.
Is that in there?
We do have blocking a driveway in our ordinance already, yeah.
So
we
the
do,
consensus is to bring those two forward,
Pardon?
add those to our municipal code, bring
Yes,
those
yeah.
language.
Yeah.
and then the third one has been kind of a tricky one on here, and it's vehicles parking in a planter strip area. Several municipalities around us have that in their ordinance. We've ran into it where there's no parking on one side of the street, and somebody will actually park in the planter strip. We do have some ways of enforcement, but it's not directly in our ordinance for enforcement. So we would ask if that could be considered. That would
Please
be,
add it.
one of the things to bring forward. But it's one of those weird safety things because now they're basically parked up against the sidewalk. So it's kind of between the curb and the sidewalk where people would come up and park in those no parking zones.
Well, also, if there are mature trees, then that vehicle is compacting the soil. And then, next thing we know, we get a request, oh, we got to take the tree out. Well, you
Right.
had been parking there,
Right.
it compacted the ground. But yes, it's a problem in McLaughlin.
Okay.
I don't know about anywhere else, but yeah, we do not want people parking their vehicles in the parking strip.
So I have to ask, do we have to define the terms stopping and standing?
They are already defined in the ordinance.
They are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll put that one on the list as well to bring back in the
So
parking
just as a
ordinance.
question, so what would constitute a violation of standing in some place that they're not supposed to be standing? I'm
think-
not being funny about it, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, and I think that that terminology goes way back, many generations, to the point of, your vehicle is left standing in a certain spot or in a certain situation. So they've kind of, I think, over the years just brought it all together, stopping, standing, or parking. Kind of brings it all together in one definition.
So this is sort of a half code compliance and half public works. So we have a number of people who, for whatever reason, get those big metal drop boxes or the pods or whatever, and they just drop them somewhere. And a lot of times they're way too close to the intersection, and they have no permits or anything because there's supposed to be a permit posted on them.
Yep.
And so how would those fit into this? I mean, I'm not trying to regulate everything, but I mean, some of them are a safety hazard.
Yeah, so that gets into our right-of-way permit process.
Right.
The pods currently are not allowed on private property. They're required to be placed on the public roadway, and then they would have to get that permit from Public
I
Works
thought that was
Engineering.
the opposite.
No, they're not allowed on private property right now.
Well, I got a dispensation from the Pope somewhere. I had one on my property for 2 months because I didn't want to put it on the street. And you know where I live, it would have been absolutely, so I put it in my driveway while I was having my floors sanded. And it
Yeah.
was in my driveway for 2 months
Yeah.
while they were doing all that stuff and I was
And-
tearing my house up.
So if we do get those complaints, our enforcement process is to contact them, have them get the actual right-of-way permit, and the right-of-way permit process identifies where they're allowed to put it, make sure it's not too close to an intersection, close enough to the curb, and then if they need to put up any reflectors, cones, things like that while it's there.
Yeah. Well, I called the city before I put it in my driveway and asked all my neighbors, I said, look, I'm going to put this in my driveway because I don't want it on the street. It would have been really dangerous. So,
Yeah, and we've seen that, and so right now, there's currently no, elective options outside of that, because you have some people that have really steep driveways, they're not gonna be able to put those in there. Same with the streets, really steep, they're on a corner, they have no means to put it on their,
I mean,
true roadway in front of their
I'd
house.
say if somebody's is utilizing one on a temporary basis, like they're moving and the pod gets dropped and they get all their stuff out and then it goes away. But it's the ones that are there and there and there and there,
And we continue our enforcement on those, definitely.
I know we had a situation where somebody was, basically I was using mine for construction, but it was the situation, it was what, 3 years? I mean, it was there for 2 months. It was, once all the stuff got done, it went away.
So we already control how long someone can park an RV on a public street, do we not?
We do.
Yeah.
We do.
And boats and God knows.
And boats and everything else. And then not to beat it to death, but are stopping and standing defined in either terms of time or location of the operator?
So basically with those, the recreational vehicles right now, per ordinance, are not allowed on the public
Yeah,
roadway.
I'm fine with that, the stopping
Yeah.
and standing piece.
The stopping and standing piece,
How is that defined?
I would have to look back and look at it to see, but are you talking like if they wanted to park downtown or just in a neighborhood?
Anywhere.
Anywhere.
So they're not allowed to be parked in any fashion at any time on the roadway. We do have a little leniency, obviously, people are gonna bring their RV home, load it up in front of their house, those kind of things. We try to work with people to be reasonable about it. We're not gonna come out and write tickets right away, but we'll work with them because we don't need it stored out there. Because the true language right now just says 0 period, they're not allowed on the roadways at all, recreational vehicles, so.
But the parking and the parking strip when vehicles are defined, so what if a boat is defined as a vehicle? Not that I've seen that, but,
It says for personal property,
okay, okay,
because I had the same question today.
okay, all right.
So we identified another one that's scattering rubbish. It seems pretty simple that we would have it. We don't have anything like that in our ordinance. So one of the things we looked at is maybe seeing if you guys would allow us to consider an ordinance about not throwing, dumping, depositing on public or private property, any substance, anything that would mar the appearance of the property, those kind of things. We can obviously bring back different options on language. This is just one that we pulled from a local agency that already has been in place.
I think it looks good.
And it would allow us to use the municipal code and the municipal court to enforce those things. So even if it pertains to like a park and somebody's dumping a bunch of stuff in there, it would take it out of a criminal sense because right now the police would have to come out and write up a crime report and, send them into court to see the judge over offensive littering. And this would basically bring it to a municipal code. It's a $300 fine. It would follow the standard practice that we have. And then we would give them the opportunity to clean it up, properly dispose of it, try to work with them through the court on that.
So this includes somebody that's trying to utilize the city trash receptacles for their personal garbage?
It could be applied to that.
Yeah, that's a
It could
must.
also be a crime of theft of services, too.
A crime of what?
Theft of services.
Oh, yeah.
Theft of services, yeah, okay.
So we could apply it either ways. We could handle it on the code side where we treat it as a violation, or we could treat it as a criminal citation. Have to come in here. Either way, they're going to have to go to court.
Well, that's a good addition, and we all know why. I mean, I don't want people setting up household and just their garbage dump is in the thoroughfare next to the RV.
Or anywhere.
Or
Yeah, we
anywhere.
currently have offensive littering under the state law, but this would allow code enforcement, if they come across something or deal it at a different level than criminal.
So what's the code enforcement response to this? You come up and you see that situation, what do you do?
So our biggest thing would be getting it cleaned up, right? If there's somebody there, we'd identify them. We have the ability to work through compliance with them, get it cleaned up, properly disposed of. If not, we've been successful in other agencies that I've worked at to identify through the trash, through video, things like that, people that actually dumped it, and then go back and enforce this on them and bring them into court under it. There's the potential of course, if we didn't have anything like this, we would still, as the city, be required to probably clean it up if it's on the public right of way. And then we would just be left without anything. So
Well, I know you can't rely on the vehicle registration to do it, so either you contact the individual or whatever.
yeah, we've been
Okay.
successful digging through trash over the years, finding things, so.
Dumpster diving.
Right.
Hey, they got somebody one time, they dumped near Mill Creek Canyon.
Yeah.
Found an envelope, something's name on it.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, if there's something really big and large and offensive, right, we would lean more towards the criminal action. If it's something that's smaller, it might be a better opportunity for code enforcement to handle that. Our officers could also enforce the code enforcement portion of that.
So if code gets an uncooperative individual and says, I'm not cleaning that up, the next step is call for your department.
Sure.
Yeah. Works for me.
Yes, sir.
One thing, and I don't know if in this pass of code revisions would be the time to talk about it, or maybe the next time you come back, but something else that I'd like you to look into, and Mr. Lewis might want to listen to this too, and that is where we have on a street where parking is allowed on both sides of the street, but there's a traffic mitigation curb bump out, and people park on that bump out.
Oh, you mean on top of it?
No, in front of it.
Oh, okay.
The street's narrowed down to where there's barely room for a car, but they park on it anyway,
Oh,
which also is a danger because a lot of times there's a sidewalk
sure.
there, a crosswalk. So
So would you be thinking of like getting those painted
Yeah.
or just adding it to the ordinance itself as a violation?
I don't know what the right solution is. I
Okay.
just know, and there's one half a block away from my house, and it's amazing how many times people park on that bump out. And it
Okay, so
happens.
you mean on the curved part?
Yeah,
Oh,
where the street narrows and there's still parking.
so you've got the
on
two,
it.
you've got this, and then you have a crosswalk, and so they're parking on
Yes.
the, what?
At the narrow spot.
What?
Yep.
Where
You
it
only-
flares out.
Yeah,
They're
that's
parking
not
where
a
it flares out.
That's just a
You
ticketing thing.
know,
Yeah, I think that's a ticket, I think
No,
that's a
no,
ticket.
no, strengthen your position, put a no parking here to corner and paint it. And then that puts everybody on solid ground.
And that would kind of then wrap back to the previous ordinance we talked about for signs and markings, those kind of things. So it would definitely be something, if you wanted to, send it over to us, we could go out and look at it with the engineering staff to see if that's, something we could add, as a no parking
That
area.
is just dumb.
I agree.
Why would you be parking there?
They're giving humanity
Because
too much credit.
The other spot might be 6 places further down the street where they have to, walk.
Oh,
Yeah, horrible.
There might be
So-
things we might be already enforced with that, so if we
well,
could go out there.
that would be
and
an emergency, that would
Some
be a
other neighborhoods
hazard.
we get some
Because you couldn't, if an
complaints about.
emergency services vehicle or somebody need to get out of there,
I'm just curious if we really have anything
Oh,
that spells
good
out you
Lord.
can't park there.
Chief,
We
could
we
you
have some
come?
other areas in the city that we have those same complaints that we deal with. So, you can't block a crosswalk. But we might be able to enforce it currently. We'll look at it. If we
Oh, I
need
would
to
think so.
come back with some different language to address that, then we'll
that's just like,
see.
But see, why not make yourself rock solid? You paint it, no parking sign here at the corner. You won't get in any arguments about over a foot from the curb. I'm not over a foot here. I might be 3 feet here.
Yeah.
You don't get all those arguments. It's plain and clear.
You know, like I said,
I don't know how you could get plainer and clearer.
yeah, I mean, I'm making a drawing right now, and I'm looking at how would you even get a car there? I don't even
This kind of
understand that.
bullshit you run into.
And so this next one kind of goes back to what
Before
we
you
talked
leave that,
about. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Another one is, I don't know how we deal with this, but the trucks have just gotten bigger, and somebody parks at an intersection, near an intersection, let's say they're within the distance that they're supposed to be. You cannot see around these, or somebody will park what are those step vans that are really tall? It's like, I don't know if there's anything it's just, you can't even see around them. By the time you get your vehicle out and you're out, you're gonna get clipped.
Yeah, if
You
there's
can't have
any
a commercial
clearly
vehicle parked in a
identified,
neighborhood anyway.
Well, that's true.
yeah, if there's any clearly identified problems, you can always send them to us. John Lewis's staff is excellent at helping us with those. Just identifying
He's not,
yeah,
he's smiling at you, Ryan.
I know.
Can you feel the love coming?
I
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
I don't know if you're in tune with body language, but arms crossed and head shaking this way does not show
Uncross your arms,
cooperation.
John, that means you're mad if you're doing this. That's like,
Okay, so on this topic, this is what we talked about earlier with our municipal code judge.
yeah, we don't have one.
There's several ordinances
Yeah.
between the 1.24020 and the 1.24260 that would just need to be reviewed by the attorneys to change that language from hearings officer to municipal court judge.
That sounds
So,
good.
Sounds good? Okay.
Just remember, much like yourself, the municipal judge is bound by the law. If the law is insufficient to allow the judge to get the desired result, we need to change that code.
And this
Okay.
came from our judge.
Yeah, this came from judge.
Oh, I only printed one of those. I only
Okay,
got one
wonderful
out.
topic of graffiti. So on the right is underneath the arch bridge. This is actually the structure is owned by ODOT.
Like, why would somebody even do that?
And the awesome part is we were able to try to work with ODOT to get it covered. They were very delayed over the summer. Our staff took the initiative to go ahead and match the color code. We bought some paint, we covered it. It looks great right now. So
It's a historic
Did we bill 'em?
bridge. They've defaced it. Oh,
Well, if it's ODOT, I say bill them.
yeah.
and then the house on the left is,
17th and,
we don't have a graffiti ordinance currently in the city. So the house on the left is secured as much as we can require them, but we cannot require them to remove the graffiti because we don't have a
Yeah.
graffiti removal ordinance.
please do that.
So one of the things that we wanted to bring forward is just kind of the overall bridges, signs, houses,
Anything.
anything that graffiti's, placed on. Having a graffiti removal ordinance, we could then require it. There are some time frame differences, so that would be something we're looking for on direction if you do want to move forward with this.
Please.
Currently, the only thing that we have in place is, the police can respond and charge somebody with a crime for placing the graffiti if they catch them, but there's no requirement even for the removal. These 4 agencies right here, they have stuff between 7 and 15 days of time frame once the property owner is notified that it's required to be removed from the property prior to any sort of enforcement with code enforcement where we would start like finding them daily
I
for
like
not
the 7
removing it.
days, because the sooner you get it off, it's a deterrent.
And the only thing we would want to just make sure is it would apply to everybody. It would apply to ODOT, it would apply to the railroad, private property owners, those ourselves.
I was going to ask, does it apply to ourselves?
Yeah. And with our staff's great. We remove graffiti every day from our machines, our signs. We try to do that. I know John Lewis's staff does the same thing every day. Just anywhere people can put graffiti, they try to. So we try to just remove as much as we can every single day as soon as it appears. So we would be just having that same requirement throughout the
Great.
city.
Yep.
Is there a cost recovery aspect to this anywhere?
We would not do the graffiti removal unless we go through an abatement process, and then we would be able to recover that through the fines in court.
That sounds like a lengthy process.
I think that the only recovery is if we caught someone and were able to identify a suspect, and through restitution, they would have to pay for whatever damage it was.
Or
But
make
if,
them take
this
them.
is if we don't catch someone, and we've seen some pretty vulgar graffiti and to get someone to address it. So we would require them to clean it up in whatever time frame the commission so chooses. But we wouldn't go in there. We would just then go through the court process of finding them for not cleaning it up in the time frame.
And you said it's a fine situation if they don't comply?
Correct. So if they don't comply in the time frame that, you want to provide, we would basically start an enforcement process, issue them a citation for each day that they don't have it cleaned up. Right now, the max fine in our code is $300 a day, and then the judge would probably order, obviously, the removal as well, once the court hearing comes up.
So do we have any kind of a system in place where obviously these folks that are doing this, that's their signature? Do we have anybody that we can rely on to help us interpret? Because they're targeting stuff and so puts their little symbol or whatever, and you'll see it all over the place, and it's their signature. So I don't know whether Portland does that, but
I don't think they're doing that anymore in Portland because they don't even respond to many of the graffiti.
well, I know, but I mean,
But we put those together and we have identified individuals and their tags. And we have been able to go and put a bunch of cases against individuals.
Okay.
So it's usually once we get someone identified, figuring out what that tag is, either we're watching them do it, we caught them, they identify what their tags are, and then we go that process.
okay. The other thing I have, it's a curiosity question. So many times as we're driving down many of our interstates, there will be graffiti or tags on the back of, they had to climb up there and they had to be doing something. I'm thinking, now somebody driving by has got to have seen that. How could you not be seeing that? And I don't know if anybody ever reports it, but I'm curious about that just because, I've seen them and I'm thinking, okay, there's no time that I've ever seen except during COVID where there was nobody on the freeway. I mean, there was somebody on a freeway, the truckers or whoever's driving around. They've got to see them doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not a safe place that you would be climbing up.
Well, we've seen it in the middle of the tunnel.
Huh?
So, right, we've seen it in the middle of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And you're like, how did someone not see
Well,
this
they
or call it
had
in?
lookouts or something, obviously. And I've seen them, when I was on Amtrak recently, there were a couple of places where you would be killed if you were there. And then here it is,
Yeah.
like, really? Okay.
So one of the things on graffiti, we'd look for some direction on duration, and then do you want it from the time the city provides notice to the property owner? Or do you want it from when the graffiti's observed and placed on the property?
How are you going to provide notification to the owner?
So we would attempt in person, phone call, but the code spells out that we have to also mail them a letter and notify them that way, the registered property owner. So we would do all of the above. Our procedure currently is in-person contact as much as possible. We would then go to phone call, and then we would follow up and send a letter the same day. So current procedure, even for most of our ordinances, we would do that and then send the letter and give them, 14 days or whatever it may be to correct the violation.
I would recommend the letter. It's a documentation of a start of a process.
Say that
Well, it's a
again.
sequential thing, I think, sir. I think if you can do it in person and you make notice that I gave notice on this date and time, you're home free. You want to back it up and you should back it up with a letter confirming our contact on this date. You were advised, okay, now you got it, now you're rock solid. But
What do you guys think of for a time frame? 7, 10, 14 days?
7. As soon as possible.
14's too long. I could live with 7 or 10.
7 or 10.
10 would, in my personal opinion, if you'd want that,
Yes, we
10
do.
days would give them 2 weekends.
Yeah,
So that, once we notify them, it would
10
potentially
calendar
give them
days.
2 weekends to get it resolved.
10 calendar days, not
10
10
calendar?
working days.
Okay.
Well, 10 working days is different than 10 calendar days.
Hence my clarification.
It's defined, that's for sure.
So we have one more,
Yes, our favorite.
and that's construction hours. We heard through the commission, we heard through some of the residents, this is something that we wanted to look at. So we brought forward what the current city ordinance is for construction hours, and that's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and then 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Sundays. In the packet and also on here, we included just what some local jurisdictions have and what the county has for their hours of operation on construction hours.
Personally, I think 10 PM is way too long. It's just, and it was, I would say it was different before nail guns, but those things are loud and you hear them everywhere. They're just, thunk, 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 thunk. I just think people should not be, even in, daylight savings time, it's dark at 10 o'clock. What are they doing out there at 10 o'clock? That they need to be, 10 PM. It's like, no, that's way too long.
Well, just for discussion, I'll throw out 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, Sunday, and holidays. Just to start the discussion.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have.
Fairly close to kind of
Yeah,
an amalgamation of what's here.
During the weekday,
While you're discussing this, this would also affect commercial construction hours. It's not just residences.
oh,
so
absolutely.
It'll affect for variances if people if construction needs to be outside of those. So there might be some unintended consequences.
Yeah, you're going to get requests for variances during the summer months when it's light till 10 o'clock. And I'm not advising, I'm against 10 o'clock.
It's dark at 10 o'clock.
I mean-
You might get to 9, maybe 9. I think it's a safety issue. I don't want somebody hanging off of a roof putting a roof on at 10 o'clock at night.
I just don't think the neighbors should have to have that noise in the evening.
I would agree with you.
Let's do it, and people can come and ask for a variance if they want it.
I have an issue with it on Sunday. It's like, gosh, just have one day that you don't have to listen to all of that all the time.
And one of the things, doing the research on this, I spoke with Aquila, the director over at the community development there, and I talked to her in regards to what this would impact for, the building permits, those kind of things. They also have a stakeholders group, the development stakeholders group, I
Yes.
believe, that meets every quarter. The consideration of, do we want any input from them? Do we want any input from the CIC, prior to, the commission making a decision, so.
I don't need this bigger than it is.
No, let's-
I'll tell you what, this commission,
We can
and
make
if you
the
look at our
decision.
goals, it's all about livability in this community. Everybody else can say what they want, but livability. So I'll start with 6 PM, and if you need something other than that, you better come up here and ask and give us a darn good reason why.
So that was Monday through Friday. What time? 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Suggestion was 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Because it's a 7 o'clock start now in our ordinance, right? 7 a.m.?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so that doesn't change. It just makes it 6 p.m. at 10 instead of 10 p.m.
Okay.
And then later on Saturday, Sunday, holiday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
They could be doing, even if they go, there are things that involve construction or work that don't make noise. You could be inside of a house painting until 10 o'clock at night because you got light. That's not bothering anybody. That's not making any noise. It's all the other stuff they're out there with the nail guns and this and that and paving and, putting stuff up and dropping stuff. I've actually gotten used to it, but, listening to the pile driver on the river, thunk, 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 for, weeks on end. They're not doing it right now, but, they may have some exemptions and they're going to still be working. I think they're out of the water now. I think they can't be in the water now doing the pounding, but, I understand that they have to get that done. I understand that. It was 7 days a week, and they did stop at a certain point in time, but it was going on till late to the night. They had all their lights out there. I don't think we're going to be building many bridges, over the course of the next, 10 to 15 years, but I've heard enough complaints from my neighbors about Sunday construction, and I don't know where to go with that. You were suggesting, what time were you suggesting on Sundays?
9 a.m. to 6 p.m.
I'm good with Mr. Mitchell's suggestion.
So I'll go with that.
I do find it interesting that we allow loud music till 10 PM,
Yeah, we need to change that.
which maybe that needs to have a quick look at that too.
Our next slide is,
Loud
it is?
music. Yeah.
I read the presentation. Did I miss that?
we
Go ahead.
didn't put the slide in there, so if there's
Yeah,
any
that
other
means I can't
changes,
have-
suggestions that you have for us.
Yeah, I can't have my
in the-
raves on the weekends now. Okay. I'll do that during the week between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m.
One of the things, we could bring back some options for you guys to look at with related to the noise ordinance. The only thing we have is it would impact some of the commercial businesses throughout the city
On noise?
for the 10 p.m. hour, yeah.
Well, I think Mr. O'Donnell gave a good suggestion that if there's something extraordinary or exceptional, we can make an exception. But as a general rule, I think livability is really key, and we want people to get work done, but maybe they schedule their work so they're doing quieter things at the later date, that don't make noise or disturbing neighbors or whatever. So let's go with that. And then you
Yeah.
talked about loud music, or maybe somebody doing, going vroom, 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 and fixing their cars in their at their house, and they're
With
revving
their car or
engines.
actually just doing that?
Yeah, it happened in McLaughlin. He was
Was the
guy was
loud
doing it.
music related, or were you thinking citywide, or were you thinking in residential neighborhoods versus commercial?
I always lean more towards residential. I mean, that's where you go to recover. That's where you go to rest. That's where you made the single largest expense you'll ever lay out in your life for most people. And we're all about quality of life. I mean, commercial, if you're in a commercial, you can't complain about being near an airport. I mean,
Here's where we do have the complaints, is the Abernathy Center,
Yep.
right? It butts up right next to.
And it's right next to, and
Yeah,
it goes
yeah.
up that hill, and it's loud, yes.
That's one of our biggest complaints that we see
Yeah.
from the neighbors there. 10:01, they're calling in and.
Yeah.
No, I would agree. I think we need to button that up a little bit, because it does affect people. I know several years ago, somebody was having a big party at the Singer Hill Cafe, and it wasn't summertime. My doors were closed, my window, it was like the band was right next to me in my living room.
Yeah.
So I just walked over there and I said, do you think you could, turn it down a little bit? I said, I can hear it in my house. I could recite all the words to the song that you were singing. And they did. They were very kind. They turned the music down. They kept going until, 10 o'clock or so, but I couldn't hear it in my house.
Yeah.
So
there's no reference to decibel meter readings, is there?
We do not have that in our
we don't
ordinance
have,
now.
yeah. There are some cities that do. When a certain person in the McLaughlin neighborhood brought the noise ordinance to
Yeah,
us,
I'm aware.
they were recommending that we get that equipment and,
See, it takes that subjective piece out of the enforcement. I mean, you get a numerical reading, then you're beyond subjectivity, well, what bothers
what's
you
too
doesn't
loud
bother
doesn't
me.
bother me, yeah.
So I don't know, I'd give that some thought. There's nothing better than just hard, you're at 68 and you're fine, and you're at 78 and you're not.
Well, it's kind of too, if it goes beyond your building and you can hear it someplace else, it's like the guys who've got their boom boxes in their car and they're bopping down the road, and it's like everybody in the half mile can hear the car, you can tell them they're coming. I think there has to be some reasonableness in terms of, the event centers, and they have to understand that they have neighbors. They know this.
See, those things can be measured. They can be a decibel reading at a distance, or a decibel reading in adjoining. I mean, they're not. We don't need to make it harder than it is. I mean, that's what decibel meters are for. They're calibrated just like police radar. You calibrate it, you take a reading.
Then
I
you
know.
got to deal with the times and the readings.
I know, but there's also something else where we have commercial properties that are adjacent to residential properties that have lights that are going up and shining in people's windows or creating that. And I'll talk to you, but I know of a particular situation they've asked the owner and have had little response.
Okay.
And I went out at night and I could see it. So happened to be out at a rave,
There you go.
Came home. I said, let me go check this out. And I thought, oh, wow, that is bright. Something happened to the pole and it's not adjusted correctly. It needs to be down. It got hit and it's now kind of like that.
Oh.
So Anything else we want to add to this list?
Not the list, but I do want to say I appreciate the work your
Yes,
crew is doing.
absolutely.
Thank you.
This commission is committed to livability, and that is particularly applies to our neighborhoods. And when you see weaknesses in this, and in conjunction with our municipal court, putting them on firm ground, put yourself on firm ground, put your police department on firm ground. We don't need to be trying these cases standing in the street, arguing about whether this is or is not. Make it clear, and you're home free.
I did have one question for you. So when I was reading the stuff from the Lake Oswego about the construction hours, they specifically call out these specific holidays. So are they saying that it's okay that you can do work between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Sunday and the following holidays if such work does not require a permit under their?
Yeah, they reduced the hours on those Sundays and the holidays.
Holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate your support, definitely.
you.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We want to make sure
Got
that, Oregon City stays lovable and livable.
Definitely.
Okay. All right, so we are adjourned, and we'll come back at, gosh, I can't quite see the clock. Let me see.
Couple after
7:02 right now.
Yeah, we're going to go into our tryptophan extravaganza right now, so we'll come back at 8 after.